Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 8, Hippias Minor 365b-c. Rhetoric is the art of persuasion by means of long speeches which sound good and therefore impressive, and this is useful in the law courts, in public assemblies and in the council. Another device that the sophists tended to teach was eristics, which is the art of apparently beating an opponent through question and answer. And in order to beat an opponent, one needs an audience, since the indication that an opponent has been beaten is the mocking of the opponent by the audience. The object of eristics is to make the opponent look stupid or inferior, and therefore logic is the last thing you need. One way to trap an opponent in eristics is to ask a question with two options, one being the opposite of the other, and neither of the options is correct. The true answer is somewhere in between, but it isn't allowed as an option, and therefore the opponent will always lose and will always appear stupid to the audience. To take an example from another dialogue, I could ask an opponent, who learns, the one who knows or the one who doesn't know? And it doesn't matter which answer the opponent gives, he will be wrong, and you can refute him very easily. Obviously, the answer is somewhere in between. The one who learns is someone who knows a bit and learns a bit more. There is a natural tendency in eristics to deal in extremes and in opposites. We can now appreciate why Socrates took some time setting up the conversation and ensuring that it would be a competition, because then he can predict what Hippias will say in response to his questions. He has ensured that Hippias has to support Achilles because he's supporting the position of Epimantus, and he has ensured that Hippias continues to say that Odysseus is polytropos, and that is the reason why Socrates then suggests that actually it's Achilles who is polytropos. He knows that Hippias will say that Achilles is the most not polytropos, Odysseus is the most polytropos, and in some way Achilles will be good because he is not polytropos. In other words, Hippias will find a bad connotation for polytropos. I'm not sure that we're supposed to think that Socrates already knew which connotation Hippias would find. We may suspect that Socrates would be happy with any bad connotation that Hippias gives to polytropos. Hippias clearly won't choose the Homeric connotation of polytropos because Achilles won't look better than Odysseus if he isn't someone who is resilient in the face of adversity, which is what Odysseus usually is. As for the other connotation of polytropos, resourceful, jack of all trades, we'll see that Hippias actually likes this quality. It's a good thing for him, and he's not going to say that Achilles is the most not resourceful. Because of the eristic nature of the competition, of this conversation, and because Hippias has to support Achilles, Hippias has to invent a connotation by which the polytropos Odysseus appears to be a very bad person, and the not at all polytropos Achilles will appear to be a very good person. And Hippias has to show that Homer made them that way. which is a very remarkable feat that Hippias achieves here. Hippias interprets much turning as devious and lying, and the opposite, not much turning, in other words simple, as truthful. This is clearly not what Homer had in mind, as we can see from the first line of the Odyssey and the lines after it. But Hippias has to show that Homer did have this new interpretation in mind, so he uses a passage which doesn't actually prove it, but it looks like it proves it. It's fairly easy from the passage to show that Homer intended Achilles to appear honest and truthful, because this is what Achilles says in the passage. It should be a little harder to prove that Homer portrayed Odysseus as a liar, because he doesn't, but the case can be made from this passage, because Achilles, who's protesting that he's a truthful person, says that he hates someone who thinks one thing in his mind but says another thing. And he says this to Odysseus, and this is, according to Hippias, proof that Odysseus is a liar. In the same passage, Achilles calls Odysseus polymechanos, much scheming, which is usually a positive term. It's resourceful, inventive. In this passage, polymechanos stands in for polytropos, which doesn't appear in the passage. For an audience not thinking too hard, Hippias might appear to have proved his case. We should note that Achilles didn't actually say that Odysseus is a liar, and even if he had, that wouldn't mean that Odysseus really is a liar. Just as Socrates saying that he doesn't know something doesn't mean that he really doesn't know that thing. Incidentally, you'll find in the Little Scott Jones Greek-English Lexicon that polytropos is interpreted, among other things, as shifty, versatile, wily, based on a wrong interpretation of a description of Hermes in another context. But then the dictionary entry continues, and in this sense, Plato took the word as applied to Odysseus, and they give this reference, this dialogue, as if Plato himself described Odysseus in this way. What we need to bear in mind throughout this dialogue is that the connotation of polytropos as lying or devious is an interpretation invented by Hippias specifically within the context of this eristic competition between himself and Socrates. It follows that in the prepared speech, when Hippias says that Achilles is aristos, Nestor is sophotatos, and Odysseus is polytropotatos, he isn't using this negative sense of being false. Although he may be using the other negative sense, the original sense of much turned by fate, by misfortune. Although it isn't clear yet why Hippias has chosen to have a prepared speech about 3 Homeric heroes with such banal epithet. Well, at least Socrates appears to be happy with this clarification. Nun o Hippia kindunium anthanen holeges, ton polytropon pseudeleges, hos gefeinetai. Now, Hippias, I probably understand what you're saying. You're saying that the polytropos is false. Well, so it seems. And Hippias replies, Malista, O Socrates, toiuton garpe poie kenton Odyssea Homeros, polachou kai en Iliadi kai en Odyssea. Very much so, Socrates, for Homer has made Odysseus such a man everywhere, both in the Iliad and in the Odyssey. This impressive hyperbole is what we can expect from Hippias, whether Homer did do this or not, and we know that he didn't. In a rational debate, we might expect Socrates now to attempt to refute this, but instead he goes off on a different tangent altogether. Edoke ara hos eoiken Homero heteros men enai aner alethes, heteros te pseudes, al ho autos. It seems then that Homer thought that one man was true and the other one false, and not the same man. Socrates and his absurd ideas makes it far too easy for Hippias to win this competition. It sounds ridiculous that the same man would be both the true and the false, the liar and the truth teller. But this is what Socrates is now considering. So Hippias speaks for all of us when he says, Poskar umele, O Socrates, how can it not be so, Socrates? Ei kai soi doke auto, O Hippia. Does it seem to you yourself, Hippias? Panton malista, kaigar ande non e me, above all things, for indeed it would be strange if it didn't. This is one of Hippias' favorite expressions. It would be strange or terrible if Hippias were to avoid Socrates' questioning. It would be strange or terrible if Hippias were not to be gentle with Socrates. And now it would be strange or terrible if he were to think anything other than what everybody else thinks. Saying, it would be strange if something or other is a good way to get people on your side. Firstly, because they also think it's strange, and perhaps if they don't think it's strange, it will make them think again and bring them on board. So it's a good tactic in eristics. Although apparently everyone has this opinion apart from Socrates, Socrates pins Hippias in particular to this opinion, that one man is true and another man is false. And it is not the case that the same man is true and false. Ton men homeron toinon easomen epe kai adunaton epanerestai typotinon tauta epoie senta epe. So let's leave Homer out of this, since it's impossible to ask him what he was thinking about when he made these words. So finally, the conversation has moved along from literary criticism to straight philosophy, and Hippias' personal view about the true man and the false man, and whether they can be the same person.